body of work I'm going to show you is work that was inspired by boat building. It's been a kind of an ongoing interest of mine over the years, and I think it's an interesting thing to add into the woodworking mix, and also what happens in the wood shop upstairs, because it's a very different approach to generating form. And the thing that's really interesting about boat building as a technology is this way that boats are often put together, a system of stations which identify what the form looks like in certain key places, but allow you to generate very complex compound forms that are bending in multiple dimensions, which is a hard thing to do in woodworking. So what you're looking at, the guy holding the boat in the left, in the upper left, is a man named Platt Montfort, who lived in Maine. He's no longer alive, but he developed this line of ultralight boats that he calls geodesic aerolites. And he's using very traditional, the boat he's holding weighs, I think it's about 7 pounds and holds one full-grown person. The technology is essentially sort of vintage airplane technology with a very simple wooden frame and then a Dacron skin. So what you see that's white is a heat shrink Dacron. I'll show you a little more about that. But one thing to maybe notice in this picture is that it's translucent, so you can actually see the water showing through the skin of the boat in that example there. So myself and 2 graduate students, one summer, we built 3 boats in the woodshop upstairs. Matthias built his as a sailing rig, which is super cool, but it actually more than doubles the weight of the boat. And one of the things these boats are about is super lightweight. So here's a little bit of the building process to see a little bit about what I mean about how the form is generated. So here's the 3 hulls in the woodshop, and you can see just the simplest outlines over the stations. There's a lot of steaming of the wood that's involved in order to do the bending. So that's Matthias pulling wood out of the steamer. So the combination of heat and moisture is what makes the wood flexible. It's a really fun process that we do a lot of in the woodworking classes. And here you can see Matthias and Ben are taking a steam bent rib and they're popping it underneath the stringers, which are the lengthwise pieces, and they're filling in the blanks and building up the grid work. So here in the lower right, you see the grid work, fairly close to complete, actually. Now, if you were to take that, frame and one person stood at the back and one person stood at the front, and you torqued it in opposite directions, it would be very, very flexible. Because the whole concept behind this ultralight building is that the parts are really undersized. It's really pushing the structural limits. And I'll show you the genius behind the design. So then later, the following year, I taught a workshop in Haystack in Maine. And we built this boat over 9 evenings. And it wasn't even a boat building workshop, it was a chair building workshop. So we did chairs till dinner time. And then we came back after dinner and we worked on the boat. We had 12 people, and Matthias and I were there together. We knew a little bit more what we were doing the second time through. So we actually had this boat, there's everybody working on it. We had this boat in the water on the 9th day. And one of the tricks here is to reduce that torsional flex. This is the idea of triangulation. And so what you're seeing in that top image, that's Kevlar thread. And one of the qualities of Kevlar is it's loose and floppy, but when you pull it tight, it snaps tight, and it has 0 stretch. And so by creating triangles and diamonds and attaching the Kevlar at the rim, by adding essentially no weight to the frame, you rigidify the whole frame. So that's the first step over the finished wooden frame. The next step is, this is the Dacron. The Dacron gets draped over, and then it's very, very hard to put fabric onto this complex form without having wrinkles. So what you do is you attach it with an adhesive all along the gunwale, all the way around the top. And then where it's wrinkled, you take a household iron, and there we're ironing the boat. And the whole thing tightens up, really like a drum skin. And that completes the boat. That boat probably was in the high 20 pounds, so super light. So this was this sort of introduction to how boats are put together and how those forms are generated. In the course of building the boats, I had a lot of conversations and talked. Boats are essentially pretty symmetrical objects, and I started thinking about both how boats move through the water and also the methods of propulsion and also sort of rationality of the form and the different experimental things. And I had this, this would be a boat you could build that would just go in a big circle. And I came pretty close to actually building the boat and making the boat that went in a circle. But in the end, I didn't make actual boats. I made pieces that are about 3 to 4 feet long. They're about 1/3 scale of actual boats. And they're more illustrations of, you could either call them bad ideas for boats or proposals for other means of propulsion. And just thinking about how boats move through the water. And also, I think it's somewhat just sort of honorific to the beauty of the boat form. So this was the first sort of simple one. So obviously a boat that swims. This one is called Eddie, sort of not like Eddie, a guy named Eddie, but Eddie, that notion of a circular backwater pattern that happens as a river flows. And then the last one was based on that sort of screwing motion, where the boat moved through the water by screwing. So these pieces, which this one's probably about 4 feet long, are all built using the same construction systems as the real boats. So here we are back in my wood shop. I just thought I'd end by showing you a little bit of how these are done. So again, it's the stations which identify the form of the boat at certain key points. But if you locate the stations, instead of locating them along a straight line, if you mess with that notion and make the boat turn a corner, you can actually build the boat just the way a traditional boat is built, but you end up with this right angle kink in the middle of it. This one, you recognize which one that is in the top. It's just built, the stations are located around a circle, which in turn generated that form. And then the trickiest one was the screw one, where the stations were actually located in a spiral along the central spine. I think one of the things that was interesting about this is it's actually a sort of a low-tech way to build objects, but then you end up with these gridded objects which look very much like computer-generated drawings, and there's an interesting sort of interface between those two design methods and construction methods. And those are the finished boats. They're just incredibly beautiful. They're just really, really amazing objects to sit in and put on the water. I believe that's the last image. And then that's my question for you. Do you analyze a chair differently than you analyze a print or a painting? How and why? So I'm going to end there, and I thought what I might do is I'm happy to take any questions if you have any questions. This is a little video of the so it's a video of kids at the museum playing with their reception desk. And if you watch this with any sort of attention, the gender stereotypes are almost embarrassing. Look at this kid. And then this incredibly gentle, thoughtful girl who carefully explores each aspect. You can't quite figure out what to make of the guy at all. So thank you all for coming. I'll just leave that running. It's actually like 4.5 minutes long. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to take questions. Better stay in here and ask questions than go outside. Yes?
I just thought the deep
the material. The relationship with the material? You mean when I was talking about the wood?
Yeah. What's the source of it? Like, what inspired you?
Yeah. So the question is about the source of my interest in wood. I don't really know, but I can tell you an interesting thing. I don't know. When I was in high school, the coolest place to hang out in my high school was the ceramic studio. It was like up where nobody bothered us. You could go on the roof and have fun. And so I did a lot of ceramics in high school. And one of the things that I didn't like about ceramics was you made these objects and then you sort of gave them up to the kiln. And the material went through this sort of fundamental transformation and like really changed. And I'm not sure how well this holds up, but I think one of the things I like about wood is a material that you take the tree and you slice it, you turn the wood into different sort of forms, but it still is the same. It's not like a metal which is made up of various sorts of materials, different alloys and so forth that are mixed together, or clays that are mixed with various raw materials. You take the tree, you take the material from the tree, and then you work with the characteristics that are carried forward from the tree. So actually really specific things like the growing conditions of that specific tree get carried forward in the board that comes from that tree. So I don't know, I like that sort of directness of the material, and that you can sort of trace it backwards to the tree itself. I didn't really answer your question, but it's a thing I've been thinking about. I'm not sure how well it holds up. But when I think about a lot of the different materials that are worked with in art making, I like the sort of directness of wood as a material. Yeah?
Do different ideas come to you? Like, I realized when I was looking at some of your chairs, they're very intricate, almost like, it's very different too, but some of the chairs are like, common, but it's kind of distorted in a certain way where it's like, oh, does it come easy to you to think of new ideas for your chairs?
Say the last sentence again, the ideas?
Just kind of repeat what I said first. Like, does new ideas come easy to you when it comes to making chairs?
I'm sorry, I didn't actually hear everything you said. Can you say it just a little bit louder?
Coming up with ideas for making chairs, does it come easy to you?
Does it come easily to me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's extremely painful. No, I mean, I'm being sort of tongue-in-cheek. I think the way idea development happens with me is I get a little sort of a seed or a kernel of an idea, and then I carry it around with me for a long time. And I do some drawing, but I have to confess, even though I think drawing is a great thing and I encourage people to do it, I more just sort of chew on them in my mind. I carry them around for a long time. And I work through different sort of iterations. And then there is a certain point where it feels like there's enough there to actually make the object. So the ideas come from all sorts of places. They come from, I mean, I think you can see that I like to look at objects in the way they function. And then I like to undermine that function, and I like to undermine that function in a way that makes a point. Like, it's not very interesting to just take a functional object and make it dysfunctional. That element of challenging the functional side of it has to say something. There has to be a point to it. It has to reveal something valuable, either in terms of the form that's generated, or in the way it makes you think about the function and the interface between the person and the function. That's where I think functional objects can really sort of transcend mere functionality and become much more sort of interesting objects. I don't know, that's a try at answering. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.